The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council thrummed with anxious murmurs as representatives from 200 species gathered for an emergency session. The chamber's crystalline dome sparkled with artificial starlight, a reminder of the Council's supposed superiority over the lesser races of the galaxy. Dreln, of the Zorith, drummed his three-fingered hand on the hovering podium, wondering which species had managed to upset the delicate balance of galactic politics this time. Order! Order in the chamber! The voice of High Counselor Valtra echoed through the neural amplifiers, her bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with an authoritative lavender light. We face an unprecedented situation. Dreln couldn't help but roll all four of his eyes. Everything was unprecedented to these pompous windbags. Last week, it was the unprecedented crisis of improper waste management in the Dravana sector. Before that, it was the unprecedented shortage of luxury pet crystals from the Andros V moons. Our long-range sensors have detected rapid expansion from the humans, Valtra continued. Her tendrils flickered to a deep blue, signaling concern. The chamber erupted in gasps and chatter. Zarn, a Doran diplomat, straightened in his seat, suddenly interested. Humans? Now that was actually unprecedented. Preposterous. Ambassador Kreth of the Mechanoid Collective clicked his metallic mandibles. Those primates can barely achieve stable fusion. Their ships look like they were designed by children playing with blocks, yet they've established 17 colonies in the past Earth month. Valtra projected a holographic map showing the rapid spread of human colonies. Red dots scattered like an unstoppable virus across neutral zones, nearing council space at an alarming rate. Dreln studied the data scrolling across his neural interface. The humans weren't following any of the standard colonization patterns. No careful surveys, no diplomatic clearances, no environmental impact studies. They just went somewhere and figured it out as they went along. Perhaps, Dreln spoke up, his naturally sarcastic tone drawing attention. We should consider that our initial assessment of their capabilities was flawed. Flawed? Ambassador Pinnock scoffed. Her crystalline form refracted light in patterns of derision. They still use chemical propulsion on their planetary vehicles. Their primary entertainment involves watching others throw spherical objects. And yet, Dreln's projection shifted to show the latest human colony, a thriving outpost on the moon of a methane giant, established in less time than it took the Council to approve parking permits for a new embassy. The chamber fell silent. The humans had done what? Without proper gravitational stabilizers, atmospheric processing, or even filing the required forms in triplicate. This is outrageous. Kreth's mechanical limbs clattered against his podium. They can't just do things. Apparently, Dreln drawled, nobody informed them of that fact. How terribly inconvenient for our bureaucracy. Valtra's tendrils flashed warning red. This is serious, Diplomat Zor. Their expansion vectors will bring them into contact with Council space within 3 standard months. We must decide how to handle this situation. Handle it? Dreln laughed, his voice a dry sound that made several crystalline representatives vibrate uncomfortably. Have any of you actually met a human? Trust me, if you try to handle them, you'll find out exactly why they've managed to do in months what takes us decades. They're not primitive. They're just completely insane. The chamber erupted into chaos, but Dreln simply leaned back in his seat, watching it unfold. The Council thought they were dealing with an upstart species that needed to be put in its place. He knew better. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. They didn't play by anyone's rules but their own. Zar's memory crystals flickered as he recalled the disaster of first contact. He had been a junior diplomatic aide back then, fresh out of the Galactic Academy of Interspecies Relations. His first assignment seemed routine. Welcome another primitive species into the galactic community. The diplomatic corps had chosen Ambassador Tinka for the mission, primarily because she held the record for the most successful first contact missions with pre-FTL civilizations. What nobody bothered to check, however, was that all those civilizations had been hive minds who communicated through interpretive dance. Your species has achieved rudimentary space flight, Tinka had announced through the Universal Translator, her tendrils performing what was supposed to be a congratulatory dance. We are here to guide you toward proper civilization. The human representatives just stared. One of them, a diplomat from a place called Texas, started making strange noises. Later, they learned this was something called laughter. "Listen, lady," the Texas human had said, wiping tears from his eyes. "We appreciate the offer, but we've been managing just fine. Maybe we could discuss trade agreements instead." Tinka's tendrils froze mid-twirl. This wasn't in the standard first contact protocol. Primitive species were supposed to be awestruck, not suggesting alternative agenda items. "You misunderstand," Tinka insisted, her tentacles now performing the dance of patient explanation to lessers. "Your species requires guidance. For example, your method of waste disposal still involves water and primitive piping." The human representative from Germany raised her hand. "Actually, we've developed matter-to-energy conversion for most waste processing. We just keep the old systems as backup. Redundancy is kind of our thing." That's when things started going wrong. Tinka's tentacles began the dance of confusion and mild panic. The universal translator, never designed to handle sarcasm, started smoking. "But your vehicles still run on exploding liquid," Tinka protested, her diplomatic training crumbling. "Oh, you mean cars?" The representative from Japan smiled politely. "Those are just for fun now. Most daily transport uses gravity manipulation, but people like the vintage experience. Would you like to see our antimatter containment facilities?" The universal translator gave up entirely and started playing something called elevator music. Drelln had tried to salvage the situation. "Perhaps we should discuss your species' application for provisional galactic membership," he suggested, hoping to get back to familiar territory. "Application?" The representative from Russia looked genuinely puzzled. "We didn't apply for anything. We just finished our first few quantum tunneling stations and thought it would be polite to say hello to the neighbors." That's when Tinka made her fatal mistake. Her tentacles began the dance of superior condescension, a move that had always worked on primitive species before. "Now, little humans," she said, "you clearly don't understand how the galaxy works. Let us explain using simple concepts." The representative from Texas stood up. "Did you just now us like we're children?" "Perhaps," the Russian added with a dangerous smile. "We should demonstrate our understanding of how things work." What happened next was still classified in most council records. Officially, the temporary embassy suffered a structural malfunction. Unofficially, humans had introduced the galaxy to the concept of pulling a prank. The entire building had been transported, through means still not entirely understood, to the orbit of Jupiter, upside down, with all the furniture glued to the ceiling. When rescue ships arrived, they found that all the human representatives had left a note. "Thanks for dropping by. Next time, try knocking. P.S. We fixed your translator. It can handle sarcasm now." Drelln smiled at the memory. He still had that note framed in his office, right next to his degree from the academy. It served as a daily reminder that the galaxy's view of primitive needed serious revision. The great misunderstanding began, as most galactic incidents involving humans did, with paperwork. The Council, in its infinite wisdom, decided to implement trade restrictions on humanity. The official reason was the protection of developing species. The actual reason? Humans were making everyone else look bad. "We can't have them trading Class S technology," High Counselor Valtra had declared. "They haven't even passed their millennial evaluation." The Council spent 6 months drafting the most comprehensive trade restrictions ever created. 300 pages of regulations, all written in perfect galactic standard, with no loopholes whatsoever. Or so they thought. 3 days after receiving the regulations, humanity submitted their compliance report. It was 2 pages long and began with, "Thank you for the suggestions." Drelln was the first to notice something odd. "Why?" he asked during an emergency session. "Are humans selling something called IKEA instructions to the mechanoid collectives?" "Those would be assembly guidelines," the human representative explained cheerfully. "Not technology, just instructions. Completely within regulations." A week later, the mechanoid collective had revolutionized their entire manufacturing process. When questioned, they simply replied, "The instructions were very clear." Once we figured out what an Allen wrench was, the Council scrambled to patch this loophole, only to discover humans selling educational entertainment to the hive minds of Beetlejuice. These turn out to be recordings of something called MacGyver. It's just a TV show, the humans explained innocently. Cultural exchange, completely permitted under Section 47, subsection B. 2 months later, the hive minds had developed 50 new forms of technology using nothing but chewing gum and paper clips. This is getting out of hand, Ambassador Kreth declared. They're clearly circumventing the spirit of the regulations. Oh, the human representative raised an eyebrow. Show me exactly where in the regulations it says we can't share our entertainment media. It's not about the media. Kreth's mandibles clicked in frustration. It's about the ideas they contain. Are you suggesting, the human asked with a perfectly straight face, that we should restrict the free flow of ideas? That sounds rather primitive, doesn't it? The council then banned the sharing of instructional materials of any kind. Humans responded by starting an interstellar exchange program. We're just making friends, they said. Cultural understanding, says right here in Section 12, that's encouraged. A month later, 17 different species have learned the human concept of reverse engineering just by watching exchange students take apart and reassemble everyday objects out of curiosity. The council banned exchange programs. Humans started a galactic chef competition. It's about food, they insisted. Everyone loves food. 3 weeks later, the photosynthetic collective of Riel had somehow learned about internal combustion engines from watching humans cook barbecue. In desperation, the council implemented a new regulation requiring all human trade goods to be pre-approved by a committee. Humans submitted 47 million applications for each item in triplicate. We're just being thorough, they explained to the drowning bureaucracy. Better safe than sorry, right? The committee had a nervous breakdown trying to process applications for items like air, funny-looking rocks, and that weird noise Jeff makes after lunch. Meanwhile, humans had started a galaxy-wide social media platform called Spacebook. It's just for sharing pictures of pets, they said. Somehow, through nothing but pet photos and status updates, 3 different species developed faster-than-light technology. How? Zarn asked the human representative during an unofficial meeting. The human grinned. Well, someone posted a picture of their cat sitting in a box, and someone else made a joke about Schrödinger, and one thing led to another. The final straw came when humans started a galactic delivery service. We're just sending packages, they said. Everything pre-approved, everything by the book. Nobody could figure out how they were making deliveries faster than authorized FTL speeds until someone realized they weren't using ships at all. They'd somehow turned the entire galactic postal system into one giant quantum entanglement network. Oh, that. The human representative shrugged. Just something we figured out while trying to get pizza delivered in 30 minutes or less across solar systems. You know how it is? The council finally admitted defeat when humans started offering regulatory compliance consulting to other species. We're just helping everyone understand the rules better, they said, while somehow teaching the silicon hives of Antares how to build antimatter engines using nothing but interpretive dance and metaphors about baseball. In the end, the council had to hire human lawyers to help them understand their own regulations. The resulting legal fees nearly bankrupted the galactic treasury. Perhaps, Drelln suggested during the final review, we've underestimated humanity's ability to break everything. Chapter 2. The Whirlwind of Progress. The Galactic Council chamber, once a place of quiet deliberation, had transformed into a frantic arena of chaotic diplomacy. For centuries, the various species of the galaxy had been governed by their long-established protocols and mutual respect. That was, until humans arrived, flipping the established order upside down like a deck of cards. Ambassador Wren, now leading the High Council after the untimely departure of Vectra, paced nervously in front of the holographic display. The room buzzed with voices, the members of the council heatedly discussing the latest developments in human expansion and influence. Wren's bioluminescent markings, which had always pulsed in rhythmic patterns of calm blue, now flickered with anxiety. If anyone had told her that an upstart species from a backwater planet could shake the foundations of galactic diplomacy, she would have laughed. But the laughter had long since turned to concern. The humans have disrupted the very fabric of our understanding, she said aloud, her voice laced with frustration, cutting through the din. The chamber grew silent. All eyes turned toward her. Their influence is spreading far faster than we anticipated. She projected a new map, this one showing not only the expanding red dots of human colonies, but now a series of blue lines. Trade routes, as inexplicable as they were efficient. These trade routes didn't follow the usual methods. They were direct, bypassing the established shipping lanes and neutral zones, creating a web of commerce no one could quite understand. Zorkal, a representative from the insectoid species known as the ZHYRR, chittered nervously, his antennae twitching in agitation. Their ships are still largely primitive. How are they managing this? I thought their technology was primitive at best. Ren shot him a withering glance. It appears they have a unique approach to innovation. She gestured to a series of clips showing humans trading anything from bio-enhanced vegetables to space pies. A bizarre concoction of ingredients that defied galactic norms but sold remarkably well in every sector they touched. A mechanical voice interrupted the growing murmurs. "We cannot allow this to continue unchecked," said Fricks, a high-ranking member of the cybernetic network known as the Omelette. His arms, extensions of smooth chrome plating, twitched with mechanical precision. "This is not simply a matter of trade, it's a matter of security. Their exponential growth cannot be permitted to destabilize our way of life." "But it's not just their expansion that concerns me," Ren said, her eyes narrowing. "It's what they do once they get there." She snapped her fingers, and a series of videos flooded the display. The first clip showed human settlers building an entire city in the desert of a distant moon, without waiting for any environmental assessments, without consulting any experts, and worst of all, without the necessary paperwork. A shocked buzz ran through the chamber as they watched the construction unfold. No biosphere domes, no shields, no atmospheric preparation, just human ingenuity and raw, reckless ambition. A few weeks later, that same city was thriving, its air breathable, its soil fertile. "I told you," Zixthor exclaimed, his voice dripping with disbelief. "They're not primitive, they're insane." Ren finished for him, her voice soft but resolute. "Yes, they are insane, but they're effective." A collective gasp rippled through the room. The humans had done the impossible yet again, breaking every rule in the book and still emerging victorious. But the council was not ready to concede. Zixthor, ever the opportunist, was the first to speak. "Perhaps this is the moment we confront them. Let us show them the true weight of our authority. A show of force may be what is needed." Ren shook her head. "That's exactly what they want. Do you think they would back down simply because we issue threats? If anything, they would find a way to outsmart us. Look what happened last time." The memory of the first contact with humans still haunted Ren. It had started with the usual diplomatic niceties, with the usual exchange of pleasantries. But when things didn't go according to plan, the humans had responded in a way no one expected. One of them, Zane, the human leader, had simply smiled and said, "Well, this is a bit awkward, isn't it?" And then they had done what no one could have predicted. Instead of retreating, instead of submitting to the usual bureaucratic protocols, they had turned the situation into an opportunity, leveraging their chaotic creativity to disrupt everything. Within days, the entire diplomatic mission had been thrown into disarray, with everyone scrambling to understand how a species that barely knew the meaning of order had outmaneuvered them. "Indeed," Ren continued, her voice now steady, "if we want to maintain our position, we need to adapt. But we cannot afford to underestimate them any longer." She paused, looking around the chamber. "Perhaps it's time we reevaluate our approach to humanity. What they lack in refinement, they make up for in sheer unpredictability." The chamber fell silent. No one knew how to respond. Even the ancient civilizations of the Yelener, who had long ago mastered the art of controlling the flow of information across the galaxy, seemed stumped. Then, with an unexpected burst of enthusiasm, Ekval, the representative from the enigmatic species known as the Ethar, spoke up. "Perhaps we should learn from them. Their methods, though unconventional, seem to produce results. Let's consider a different approach. Instead of banning their influence, we could embrace it. What if we invited them to collaborate on a new kind of galactic order?" one where innovation is not stifled, but nurtured. The idea hung in the air, suspended by the weight of its audacity. Could the Galactic Council, with all its history and protocol, truly change its ways? Could they afford to accept that humanity, reckless, chaotic, and unpredictable, might be the future of the galaxy? Maybe we should let them show us the way, Ren murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Maybe it's time to stop trying to control them and start learning from them. Chapter 3. The Price of Chaos. The galaxy hummed with an energy unlike any before it. The usual rhythms of trade, diplomacy, and routine space exploration had slowed to a crawl as the Council grappled with its latest decision, one that felt as much like a surrender as a strategy. Humanity, that unpredictable and seemingly unmanageable species, was becoming a force to be reckoned with. The once thought to be insignificant species from Earth had proven themselves capable of surviving, and even thriving, without adhering to any of the long-established protocols. And now, the Council was considering inviting them into the fold. Ren sat in her chambers, fingers tapping absent-mindedly on the cool surface of her console. She could still feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. The proposal to allow humanity to not only contribute to, but also help shape the future of galactic society had sparked an avalanche of debate. There were arguments for and against, but the one thing everyone could agree on was the strange, undeniable pull humanity exerted. No one knew how, but humanity had proven themselves as catalysts of change in ways the galaxy had never anticipated. "What are we really doing here?" she murmured to herself, but the question was quickly drowned out by the chime of an incoming message. It was Zixthor. His face flickered into view on her screen, his multiple eyes shifting uncomfortably. "Ren," he began with his characteristic blend of sarcasm and exasperation. "The situation is complicated, to say the least. Have you reviewed the latest data? The human expansions are reaching critical mass." "I know," Ren replied, her voice calm despite the turbulence she felt inside. "I've seen the data. The colonies are self-sustaining. They're bypassing our bureaucratic systems and thriving. They've outgrown us." Zixthor scoffed, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "It's not just that, though. They're not just colonies anymore. The humans are turning entire sectors into, what do they call them? Communities? It's a self-sustaining model, an economic engine that needs no oversight, no regulation. They're creating something we've never seen before." Ren leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "And that's why we need to adjust. We cannot keep pretending that they're an anomaly or a passing trend. They are becoming a legitimate power in the galaxy." "But Ren," Zixthor said, his tone suddenly more serious, "if we let them continue unchecked, we risk losing control of everything. They will spread beyond the neutral zones, beyond the outer rims, and we won't be able to contain them. We're talking about unregulated development on an interstellar scale." A new thought tugged at Ren's mind. What if that's exactly what they want? Not control, but freedom? What if they don't even want to be a part of this system we've built? Zixthor's eyes widened, his typically exasperated expression replaced with genuine curiosity. "You think they want to rebel?" "No," Ren said slowly, considering the possibility. "I think they're just different. They don't operate under our rules. They think for themselves in ways that threaten our status quo. What if they're just creating their own space in the galaxy? What if they have no desire to be ruled by us at all?" There was a long pause before Zixthor responded. "You may be right, and that's what makes them dangerous." Ren sighed. "Perhaps, but it's also what makes them valuable. There is something to their way of thinking. We can't afford to dismiss them entirely." Zixthor shifted uncomfortably. "What's your plan then?" "Because, as much as it pains me to say this, I'm starting to think you're right. We can't keep pretending they're just a passing inconvenience." Ren nodded, already planning her next steps. "We need to understand them better, to work with them on our terms. We can't fight the inevitable, but perhaps we can guide it." 3 days later, the High Council convened for what was billed as the most critical session in galactic history. It was a moment that would define the future. Either humanity would be welcomed into the galactic fold, or the Council would attempt to impose its order upon the seemingly unyielding species. Tensions were high. and the chamber felt as though it might collapse under the weight of the decision being made. As representatives filed into the room, Ren took her place at the podium, the artificial starlight shimmering around her. It was customary for the leader of the council to open the session with a speech, but this time, Ren had no words of comfort or platitudes to offer. The stakes were too high, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. She looked across the room at the gathered representatives, each species as unique as the stars themselves, all waiting for her to guide them through the chaos. It was clear that no one had a clear answer, and that frightened her. "We are faced with a challenge unlike any we have ever encountered," she began, her voice steady. "Humanity has defied all expectations. Their rise has been nothing short of meteoric. Their growth is rapid, unpredictable, and relentless. And, as we know all too well, they refuse to play by the rules." A soft hum of agreement rippled through the chamber. "Yet," she continued, "it is undeniable that their methods have produced results. In mere months, they have established colonies, formed trade routes, and influenced entire sectors. We have never seen anything like it." Ren paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the room. "Some of us believe humanity's expansion must be halted. Some of us believe we should embrace them. And others, like Zixthor, believe they are a threat to our very existence." She turned to address Zixthor directly. "I do not disagree with the risks, but I also do not believe we can continue to operate as we have. We cannot crush them. We cannot control them. But we can adapt. We can learn from them." A murmur swept through the chamber. Ren could feel the uncertainty in the room. This was the heart of the matter. Could the galaxy, with its long history of rules and structures, truly learn from a species that rejected all norms? She met each gaze in the room, her resolve firm. "I propose an unprecedented alliance. We invite humanity to become partners in the governance of the galaxy, not as subordinates, but as equals. Together, we will chart a new course for the future, one where innovation, freedom, and creativity are valued above all else." The room fell silent. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, and for the first time in galactic history, the council was at a loss for how to proceed. Ren's words echoed through the chamber, a ringing call to action. "It is time for the galaxy to adapt. It is time for us to be as brave as humanity." And with that, the future was set in motion, one that would test the limits of the galaxy and its inhabitants. Chapter 4. The Reckoning. The council chamber was more crowded than ever before. Every species that had ever been part of the Galactic Council, or any species with ambitions of joining it, was in attendance. The decision they had made in the last meeting to invite humanity into the fold had caused a ripple that spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. It wasn't just the council that was involved now. The galaxy had been forced to take notice. Some saw it as the dawn of a new era of cooperation, while others whispered about the end of the established order. Ren stood at the podium once again, her eyes scanning the room. She had spent the past few days meeting with ambassadors, leaders, and representatives, some of whom were still furious about the council's decision. Among the strongest dissenters was Ambassador Kret of the Mechanoid Collective, who had argued vociferously that humanity's unpredictable nature would disrupt the stability of the entire galaxy. But it was too late to reverse course. The first human delegation had already arrived, and despite the growing tension, Ren could feel a shift in the air. Humanity was here to stay. The chamber fell silent as Ren activated the holographic interface. The projection flickered for a moment before stabilizing, displaying the human delegation's flagship, a massive, gleaming vessel that was a far cry from the bulky ships most of the council had expected. There was no excess ornamentation, no show of galactic superiority, just function. The humans had learned how to maximize efficiency in a way that was baffling to the more traditional species, and it was exactly this that had made so many uneasy. A voice echoed across the chamber, amplified by the neural connection. "Council of the Galaxy," the human representative began, "I am Ambassador Alden Dre. We come not as conquerors or beggars, but as equals. We have learned much from the galaxy, and, in turn, we hope to share what we have learned There was a brief murmur of surprise. No one had expected humanity's ambassador to address the council with such formality. But Ren couldn't help but notice the undercurrent of genuine sincerity in Alden Dre's words. His species was unpredictable, yes, but they were not without purpose. She felt a surge of something unexpected. Hope. You speak of learning, said Kret, his mechanical limbs clicking impatiently as he stood. Yet your actions have demonstrated nothing but a blatant disregard for the rules, for the laws that bind us together. How can you claim to be equals when you've ignored everything we've built? Alden's voice remained steady, though his eyes seemed to glint with an edge of something like amusement. Ambassador Kret, the rules you speak of were written in a time when there were no species like us. You've built your systems on stability, predictability, and control. But we, humans, build on innovation, flexibility, and, yes, sometimes chaos. You see it as a threat, but we see it as a challenge. A challenge to build a better galaxy, a more dynamic one. Zixthor's voice, usually so full of sarcasm, was now tinged with concern. A challenge? You would remake the galaxy in your own image? The chaos you spread is already far beyond what we anticipated. What will you do when you've pushed the galaxy to the brink? Alden's eyes locked on his Zixthor's with unflinching intensity. We will step back when we see that the galaxy has changed with us, when we have learned from each other, and when our differences are no longer a reason for conflict, but a source of strength. The chamber fell silent again. This time, the weight of Alden's words seemed to hit harder. The galaxy had never known such radical thinking. Everything had been so structured, so controlled. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was something worth considering in Alden's words. Ren stood up. Perhaps it is time we reconsidered our vision. Maybe the council has outlived its original purpose. Maybe it's time to let go of some of the old ways and build something new. At those words, the room erupted into a cacophony of voices, some with agreement, others with alarm. But through it all, Ren's voice carried above the noise, firm and resolute. Enough, she commanded, and the chamber fell silent. We have reached a crossroads. The decision we make today will determine the future of this galaxy for generations. We can either accept the changes humanity brings with them, adapt to a new way of thinking, and build a more dynamic, more resilient galaxy, or we can resist, continue to fight them, and risk everything we've built falling apart. She turned to Alden, her gaze unwavering. I, for one, believe that humanity is the challenge we need. If we do not rise to meet it, we will stagnate. We will become a relic of the past. Alden nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. We are not here to tear anything down, Ren. We are here to build, to expand, to grow together. Ren's heart was heavy with the weight of her words. The path they had chosen was uncertain, but one thing was clear. It would be the path of change, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not. I propose, Ren said, that we grant humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Council. We will work with them, not as masters and subordinates, but as partners. They will prove themselves in time, and in turn, we will learn from them. The chamber went still. Zixthor stood, his mandibles clicking, but there was no immediate protest. Kret remained silent, his mechanical limbs folded in thought. The representatives exchanged glances, some hesitant, others eager. Finally, Ambassador Kret spoke, his voice tinged with grudging respect. I suppose we may have underestimated them, but the terms will be strict. We cannot allow their reckless expansion to disrupt our way of life. Ren smiled, but it was a smile tempered with the realization that this was only the beginning. We'll set the terms together, Kret, but we must be open to new ideas if we are to move forward. The decision was made. Humanity would be allowed to join the Galactic Council, not as subordinates, but as co-creators of a new future. As the meeting adjourned and the representatives filed out of the chamber, Ren stood alone for a moment, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the dome. The galaxy was on the edge of something momentous. She wasn't sure where it would lead, but she knew one thing for certain. It would never be the same again. The universe had been brave. But now, humanity had shown the galaxy that bravery alone would not be enough to survive. The The galaxy would have to learn how to adapt. And for better or worse, it had no choice but to learn fast.